Hello. A while back I made a video on Extinction Rebellion and the latest London protests. Um, we say protests, I'm more inclined to call them stunts because I don't think what they do is legitimate protest. Anyway, there's another group calling itself Insulate Britain, and there were reports going around Yahoo News and so on that they held up the M25. I don't know if this was today or yesterday, recently, regardless, um, and that they blocked it. This is one of the world's busiest roads. It's London Orbital, certainly one of the world's largest orbital roads. I think actually it's second only to the Moscow orbital motorway. But regardless, it's the M25. Um, so with these stunts, they are gridlocking thousands of people. That's not even an exaggeration. And I came across an interesting clip, Richard Madley on not Good Morning Britain, the other one. I think it's this morning. I forget. I get Good Morning Britain and the other one mixed up. But anyway, Richard Madley put it to one of their representatives an interesting scenario. Imagine if you had, and this is plausible when there are thousands of people affected. Imagine you had a parent who had a child that they were trying to get to a cancer specialist, and they were held up. How would he feel? And he put that to this guy, and the guy was like, "Oh, I'd be furious." But then the follow up was, "But you still do it." And you know, it was only a segment of the interview, but there's so many scenarios like that. What about a desperate husband getting his expectant wife to hospital? People might say, "Oh, they go in an ambulance." Not always. Depends where the hospital is. It depends on the particular situation. Um, there's all sorts of situations. Someone could be meeting a loved one at an airport. Maybe they haven't seen them for months because that person was held up by COVID restrictions. There's a lot of scenarios, a lot of potential scenarios. And I think one of the things these environmental groups do is they kind of rationalize themselves. Well, okay, it's going to aggravate the public, it's going to inconvenience them, but it doesn't really matter because our issue is bigger. That's how they justify themselves because they see it as a minor inconvenience compared to the issue that they're arguing about, which is climate change. I believe that they do far more harm than good. I don't think their actions are productive. I don't think it helps reduce a single carbon emission. I mean, actually, it can help to increase it because if they're gridlocking traffic, okay, some of those cars might turn the engine off, but a lot of them are going to be, waiting to see what happens, and the engine's going to be running, and then that's going to do nothing for the environment. When they vandalize buildings, in the case of Extinction Rebellion, it takes fire hoses to get rid of that. I imagine get rid of the paint, or at least it certainly takes resource, takes water. It's so their very actions are hurting the environment. This is the irony about these eco groups. They claim to be these visionaries who are teaching the rest of us. But I have yet to see a single productive thing they have done. And I actually feel it's a little bit dangerous because when you get people who are so adamant that their approach is right and everyone else is wrong, you can't reason with that mindset. I think it is extreme. It's zealotry. We're right and everyone else is wrong. You have to listen to us. You have to obey our demands. Um, so when people criticize the policing bill that was proposed earlier this year by the Home Secretary, there was a lot of hyperbole that said, "Oh, this is going to take away our freedom to protest." But that bill was designed precisely with public frustration in mind. It was proposed because people were fed up of the likes of Extinction Rebellion, thinking they could do whatever they want, and what many people saw as a far too passive police response. I think we're at a point now where the wider public are so fed up with these groups, and they do want more robust action. But this is not because people are in denial of the problem that they claim to be all about, which is climate change. I just think they're so self-righteous because they seem to think that the rest of us are ignorant, that because we're not supporting their tactics, we don't believe in science or we don't believe in the problem. Um, it's just ridiculous. And it is zealotry. And my point would be, at what point do they, where do they draw a red line? Because they rationalize themselves, our tactics are peaceful. And, their definition of that is it's an absence of physical violence. So Extinction Rebellion, Insulate Britain, and so on, they're not um, they're not throwing punches, they're not violent in that sense. But does that mean they're peaceful? Is deliberately hurting the public a peaceful act? Is vandalism a peaceful act? Is causing huge amounts of stress a peaceful act? I don't think so. I think it's a provocative and aggravating act. I don't think it's peaceful. I think the concept of peaceful protest is thrown around a bit. To me, peaceful protest would be that you assemble, you hold placards, you make your case, but you do it in such a way that you're not deliberately hurting the public. Blocking roads is sure to do that. I mean, if they were outside a power station, I probably wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but at least it would make more sense. It wouldn't be hurting the public in the same way. I still wouldn't necessarily agree with it, but um, I just think it's potentially dangerous when you have people who just there's no reasoning with them. We are right. The issue is so big that it doesn't matter what we do. We're justified. How do you reason with a mindset like that? Um, but I would just conclude with this thought. I do not think it's right that a minority can hold basically the majority to ransom. That's what they're doing. They're basically saying because the issue is so profound, we could do what we like. Oh, because we're drawing attention to it. In their arrogance and in their self delusions, Extinction Rebellion say we're doing this because we want to draw attention to the problem. But when they engage in their stance, they're not drawing attention to the flooding in Germany or increased desertification across the world or wildfires or increased temperatures. People aren't looking at Extinction Rebellion and think, oh, well, let's talk about the rising temperatures. Let's talk about rising sea levels. Let's talk about the fate of polar bears. Let's talk about struggling farmers in the Sahel. That's not what people talk about when they see this. They think, what a bunch of selfish anarchists. And this is something that they just don't grasp. I'm not saying they should just put down the placards and just accept the situation. What I'm saying is there are other ways to do it. And in the next video, I'll be talking about some practical approaches because this isn't about being apathetic. It's not about just accepting the situation. I do think that there is a pressing problem with climate change. I do think these are very, very serious issues. But I also believe that the methods of groups like Extinction Rebellion, Insulate UK, Insulate Britain, I've only come across this group today. There's probably other splinter groups, and probably some of them are even more extreme than Extinction Rebellion. I think they are hurting. I think they're actually hurting the movement. Um, because when people are focusing on their antics, they're not focusing on the actual green issues. That's the irony of it. And in their arrogance, they don't seem to understand that. They're not heroes. They think that they're heroes. They're not. Um, I'll leave it there. But if any of them happen to be watching this video, if you're aligned to one of these movements and you're watching this video, I would ask you, please just consider the individual circumstances that you may be impacting. And you think you're doing it for the planet? How does holding up a sick child from getting to hospital help the planet? It doesn't. And I'll say this, the more this continues, the more angry the public's going to get. And I think there might even be vigilantism. I hope there isn't. I hope it doesn't escalate. I hope these groups have a good look at themselves and realize that they're not changing a damn thing. But I don't think they're going to do that. So I think, unfortunately, it's going to increase tensions, and at some point, the public will be so sick that they'll fight back. I do think the public will be justified in peaceful fight back, i.e., taking legal action against them. Put it this way: I don't drive, but if I did, if I had a sick child, or if I, was impacted in such a way that it hurt me or a member of my family or people I cared about, I would absolutely be taking legal action against the protesters, um, for the stress that they caused. For example, if let's just say I'm a husband and I'm bringing my pregnant wife to hospital and we lose a child because she miscarried because the car was held up, I would absolutely be taking legal action against them for emotional distress. That's just an example. I mean, that isn't going to happen in my case because I don't drive, but this isn't, it doesn't look like there's any signs of abating. This could continue. And I'm concerned that it's going to come to a sort of fever pitch, a boiling point where the public will be so fed up that unfortunately there might be violence. I hope there isn't. Um, I have contempt for their tactics, but I don't want to see I don't want to see violence. But I do think that, when you push people, and push people, things will get heated and people will get fed up with it. And they, frankly, will have no one to blame but themselves because they made the decision, we are going to hurt the public. What do you expect? How do you expect the public to react? In their arrogance, and I keep emphasizing this because they have no introspection. In their arrogance, they seem to think that it's a strange logic. We'll polarize the public and the public will come on our side. That's a strange logic. I really don't understand their thinking in that sense. They're not practical.